हयग्रीवम् Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Janani, I think there was a small technical hitch. So part of your beginning was not covered. So I would request if you could start. I could hear, but may not go into the YouTube if you don't mind.
Okay.
If you could,
Sure.
because it's a short one. It probably for outsiders may not be complete. If you could please.
Jnananandamayaम् Jnananandamayam Devam Nirmalasphatiकाकृतिम् आधारं सर्वविद्यानाम् आधारं सर्वविद्यानां हयग्रीवम् उपास्महे हयग्रीवम् उपास्महे
Thank you, Janani. This is the first time we had prayer sung twice, thanks to the technical glitch. Just in case you missed Janani's background, she is a disciple of Ananthalakshmi Saragopan, Kalaimamani Srimati Geeta Raja, and Sangeeta Kala Acharya Neela Ramgomal, Neela Ramgomal. And she has been performing from the age of 13 and done for 3 hours at Kumbakonam. She is very well known in the music circles, and she is a qualified chartered accountant and associate actuary, currently working as a consulting actuarial analyst, balancing her passion, which is Carnatic music, and profession. Thank you, Janani. We look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, sir. Just to add one more thing, I'm also continuing to learn from Kalaimamani Srimati Geeta Raja.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, as always, we thank Sri Kanchi Mutt for our ongoing Kashmir initiatives. Offer our namaskarams to His Holiness Sri Shankara Vijayendra Saraswati Swamigal. Kanchi Mutt has always been in the forefront, modestly working with the sole aim of national integration, spiritual enlightenment, and preserving the uniqueness of Kashmir, as Kashmir is our cultural heritage. We are very pleased to welcome Sri Bharat Wakhlu with this brief introduction. Bharat Ji is a seasoned business leader with diverse interests and gifts. He is the founder and the president of Wakhlu Academy Advisory, offering his services to a wide range of businesses and executives as a transformational thought leader, a futuristic strategic consultant and leadership coach. He is a renowned keynote speaker and author who enjoys writing fiction and non-fiction and has written and spoken extensively on management, business transformation, ethics and leadership, and spirituality. Before establishing his own strategic leadership consulting firm, he spent more than 30 years working as an entrepreneur and business leader within Tata ecosystem, starting his career as a graduate engineer on the shop floors of Tata Motors in Pune, India, to become a resident director of Tata and Sons and into the prestigious Tata Administrative Service. Till October 2016, he served with the U.S. helicopter company Sikorsky Aircraft Corporation, now part of Lockheed Martin, in Stratford, Connecticut, as a managing director for India. Bharat ji holds an MBA from IIM Bangalore, advanced management diplomas from INSEAD France, and Wharton Business School. He is fluent in 6 languages, including German, Marathi, and of course, Kashmiri. Bharatji, we welcome once again and please take over.
Thank you very much, Shankarji. At the outset, allow me to extend my pranams to His Holiness Shankaracharya Jayendra Saraswati ji and to all the organizers at the Kanchi Kamakoti Peetham and the associated organizations for arranging these very enlightening episodes on Kashmir and its many facets and dimensions. And since you have personally been curating this, Shankarji, I want to also express my gratitude to you for doing an extraordinary job of bringing alive the stories and contributions of Kashmir Desha to the whole of Bharatvarsha. And I think that's an extraordinary thing that you have done, for which I'm eternally going to be grateful to all of you. So, today, as has been announced, I will be speaking about on the theme actually of invigorating Devi Sharada, healing the generational trauma in Kashmir. So, a lot of people, in fact, have been wondering what is the connection between these two ostensibly diverse parts of, of the theme. But that will be revealed gradually as we go more into detail. But I would like to share with you and the audience that I will be my uh, talk is going to be in 4 parts. In the first part, I will briefly talk about the context of what it is that I am going to speak about. The second part will be about the evolution of Kashmir's unique values and principles, spiritual values and principles. The third part will be about the era of conquest and coercive persuasion. And the fourth part will be healing the generational trauma. So I will go in these 4 portions systematically, but I would also be very grateful, and I'm requesting the audience that if you have any questions, I would be very pleased and honored to respond to them. They need not only be on what I'm going to tell you today, but anything that you might wish to clarify about Kashmir based on the extraordinary work that the Kamakoti Peetham has done over the right from 15th August 2021. And today is apparently the 68th such episode. So let me first of all start off with a small mantra dedicated to the goddess Sharada herself. And this is a mantra that has been used since time immemorial. Namaste Sharada Devi, Kashmir Puravasini, Tramaham Prarthe Nityam, Vidyama Danam Che Medehi. Grant me the boon of your grace to be able to carry forth this idea, the thought, the spoken word with the right intention. May that wisdom flow tonight. So, this prayer is something that has been used, as I said, for millennia. And one of the reasons for that is that Sharda Devi is considered to be the Devi that resides in Kashmir. And that's why when I mentioned in the theme that I'm speaking about invigorating Devi Sharda, it's because Sharda is the patron goddess, the living essence, this living energy that stimulates consciousness as per the Kashmiri thought process as part of the larger Sanatan Dharma. So let me first of all tell you about very briefly about the context of what I intend to share with you. You know, I have grown up in Kashmir, and those of you who have been there would realize that something about that place, its isolation, the fact that it's covered, uh, surrounded by mountains that are covered with snow all the year round, glaciers, beautiful forests, rivers, lakes. There's something about that place that inspires contemplation. It is a place that makes people wonder at existence. It makes people think about where has all this come from, and not just now. I'm saying even uh, for thousands of years before we talk about Sanatan Dharma, these thoughts, this curiosity would have been embedded in the very essence of people living there. Closer in time, you also know that Kashmir used to be a vast ocean, a small, not an ocean really, but more like a large lake. The entire valley was covered with water. It was called Satisar. And then Lord Vishnu, in his boar incarnation, the Varaha incarnation, he cut a furrow in a place that today is called Baramulla, actually Barahamula in the olden days, and the water was drained and the place got populated with people. So fundamentally, the very isolation, the very long winters would enable the people living there to think and contemplate and reflect on whatever they would see in the objective world around them. And because of this isolation, there was also a unique way in which, under the overarching umbrella of Sanatana Dharma, there was a beautiful evolution of a unique Kashmiri ethos, which resulted in the seven values and guiding principles that became part of the Kashmiri way of searching for the one truth as part of the Sanatan Dharma tradition. So that's the broad context, with Sharda Devi herself being uh, the feminine divine. The women of Kashmir always had equal equality with men. There was no discrimination. They were educated. They too were seekers, curious, and enabled to add to the body of knowledge that came out from Kashmir. So, what were these seven unique elements that I'm referring to as part of the evolution of the Kashmiri way of approaching the truth? So, first and foremost, let me clarify that Kashmir was operating under the same broad elements and architecture of the Sanatan Dharma. One existence, uh, which divides into many, then rebirth, karma, service, and all the Shrutis, the Smritis, the Purans, Itihasa, the Mahabharata, and the Ramayana, and a huge amount of science, mathematics, philosophy, everything contributing to this beautiful architecture that we today know as Nathan Dharma. So within that, even Kashmir was operating. However, because of the isolation, because of the tradition of Devi Sharada being associated with the place, and because we also knew that Shiva, the infinite consciousness, resides in Kashmir, we realize that everything that is present in the objective world is basically a play between Shiva and the feminine element, which is Shakti. In other words, this whole creation is a result of the play, the Leela between Shiva and Shakti. So you got to appreciate this. The word is Leela. It's not as if this is unique only to Kashmir, but in Kashmir, this was imbibed very, very deeply in the thought process. So if existence, the one existence, manifests into myriad forms and shapes and sizes and colors because of the Leela, the play, the joyous play of Shiva and Shakti, then the whole of life itself is a celebration. So, if Shiva and Shakti's play gives rise to everything, then it follows that even human life has to look at everything that Maya has thrown up in a way that it is to be celebrated. So, the element of celebration, when you realize that everything has emerged from joyous play, human life becomes a celebration. And that is the second important element of the seven unique values that I associate with the spiritual ethos of Kashmir. The third one is, and that's also a very, very important element, self realization requires, of course, concentration, meditation, dharana, but it is open to all. You need to have the grace of existence, yes, and through a little bit of one's own work and a bit of a realization that each of us might have a different pathway to proceed towards realization of the truth, each of us is enabled to achieve moksha. And this is a very, very important theme. And this has, through the ages, Kashmir has produced known and unknown people who have contributed to Sanatana Dharma because they were truly able to articulate for the benefit of the common people things that would otherwise be so difficult to achieve and realize. So we've had mystics like uh, Laleshwari, we've had Nundurishi, we've had Robo Bhavani, we've had Sachikral, who was basically a potter. We've had so many others who, through the ages, have contributed to this realization. The fourth ideal, the fourth value was that because we are all unique and because the end goal is realization of the truth, we will have to adopt a pathway that suits our temperament. And therefore, there has to be complete freedom of thought, freedom of experience, and there has to be a way to approach things in a way that suit me. Now this is a very, very unique idea in my opinion. It gives huge amount of individual freedom for a person to attain to moksha, attain to self realization in a way that is uniquely suited to one's temperament. And that's a very important part because we also talk about the gunas and the preponderance of one guna over the other of one's own approach in the spiritual journey. But most importantly, it allows for each of us within the broad parameters of Sanatana Dharma to pursue an approach which might be different, unique, where I might even experience something new. Why I can give a commentary. There are so many people from Kashmir who wrote uh, commentaries on prior spiritual works, and not just on spiritual works, but even on linguistics, on language, on science, on mathematics. So Panini, for instance, he wrote an extensive commentary on Sanskrit. Similarly, Abhinav Gupta in the 13th century, or a little before that, sorry, 12th century, wrote a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. Even though he's better known, like his guru Vasudeva, for the Kashmir Shaivism contributions that they made. So my point being that because each person was pursuing a unique approach to the truth, they came up with new knowledge, new insights, and because Devi Sharada is the inspiration for all words, thoughts, ideas, she in a sense blessed anything new that was coming up, and which explains to a large extent how Kashmir was able to prolifically contribute to the Sanatan Dharma of Bharatvarsha. The fifth one is that if there were wise men or women who had differences of opinion about the approach, the path, they would debate. They would not pick up arms, they would instead sit across one another. They would wear garlands and they would express their ideas so that either one of them could either convince the other or be convinced. And of course, the Purans mention that the debaters would put beautiful garlands of flowers. Kashmir has an abundance of them. And the debater who was able to hold his or her own would typically have the garland remaining beautiful and fragrant, whereas the opponent who could not convince anyone, the garlands, the flowers of the garland would wither. So debating was also given a huge emphasis and remained an important element of furthering the vast knowledge within the overall canopy of the Sanatana Dharma. In fact, when Adi Shankara came to Kashmir, he also debated and spoke to a number of people, including a lot of Buddhist monks who at that time were residing in Kashmir, and convince them about the Vedantic way of thought. So debating was also the fifth important element. The sixth one, and this is something which involved everybody, there was a consistent effort to pursue excellence and beauty, which is why the sculptors of Kashmir, the artists, the wood carvers, the artisans, some of their work, some of their uh, the artifacts that they have made to this day evoke wonder and a great feeling of joy, because excellence and beauty were considered to be important. These were considered to be refinements that would take a person's skill higher and higher to perfection. So that was the other important value. And finally, all this would obviously have required some kind of a broad ethical, uh, some kind of an ethical boundary within which everybody had to function. And that was also provided because it was said that alongside with a celebration of all in the objective world, righteousness can only be found where there is joy. That means joy and righteousness were connected, and anything that promoted unity was considered to be ethical. Anything that brought about separateness was unethical, and duties towards one's teachers, elders, towards one's family, to society, all those were considered to be virtuous acts that had to be done. So these seven conditions. I want to clarify, these are not unique to Kashmir, but these seven were found in Kashmir for the longest time. And you can argue that, look, but this is something which was there in other parts of Bharatvarsha as well, and I completely agree with that. But in my own estimation, these seven basic ideas, these values or guiding principles for spiritual realization played a very, very key role in the kind of ambience that existed in Kashmir, which enabled people from that region to contribute substantially to the furtherance of knowledge in the sciences, in maths, in the spiritual arena, in the pathways to moksha through the ages. So seven of these values, let me quickly repeat them again. All of creation is a lila, a play between Shiva and Shakti. Two, if that be the case, life has to be a celebration. And that explains our great uh, orientation towards fun and food and celebrations. The third one is everybody can get self realized. Number four, it requires people to align with their own gunas, their own temperament, and therefore freedom has to be given. Anybody who wants to convince another person has to debate and use the power of speech to convince the other. In fact, Abhinav Gupta in one of his commentaries mentioned that in Kashmir, even the soldiers were articulate because speech was given such a lot of emphasis. Then the pursuit of excellence and beauty in whatever one does, and finally the ethical principles of righteousness going hand in hand with happiness and joy, promoting unity and not separateness, and pursuing duties as a virtuous act for the well being of all. So, within this broad set of conditions, the people of Kashmir contributed substantially for well over 1500 or almost 2000 years to the enrichment of the Sanatan Dharma. Let's now move on to the third part. What exactly occurred? Where did the change? Where did the people of Kashmir start weakening in their resolve to stay on these seven guiding principles? Unfortunately, humans have a dark side, and Kashmir, by virtue of being in the northern part of Bharatvarsha and on the pathway of many many cultures from Central Asia and elsewhere, it was on the road where many, many conquerors came into the valley. And of course, the land itself is fertile, the people are free and open and handsome and good looking. So there was always a lot of people who wanted to, explore, adventurers, and so on. Now, in a land where freedom, where women are free, where everybody is free and pursuing their own thing, in such a land, when you bring in conquerors who want to, in a way, insist on obedience and insist on everybody doing the same thing, it is extremely painful. So I call this phase, the era of conquest and coercive persuasion. So, from complete openness, celebration, freedom of thinking, freedom of speech, debating, we were for almost 800 years subjected to extraordinary brutality where disobedience meant death. Forget about debating. You didn't agree with me? Chop off the head. So, from it was a terrible, terrible, brutal decline. Now, Goddess Sharada, it's part of her Leela, it's part of her grace, but the fact remains that the brutality that was experienced by people, the breaking of temples, the killing of people, the enslaving of women and children, the brutality left terrible, terrible scars. Now, you might say, but how do you know this? I know this because we have scientists and psychiatrists and psychologists who have studied how authoritarian regimes in this day and age, in the 20th and the 21st centuries, are trying to bring about obedience. I don't have to go very far back in time. We're seeing something like that in Iran right now. People are getting killed simply because they want freedom. We are seeing people, who are trying to impose enormous cause for uh, disobedience. Similarly, countries like North Korea, where people have been, literally violently intimidated into abiding by some norms. So unfortunately, when you impose restrictions on people's behavior, on the information they receive, on the thought they have, on the emotions that they feel, you actually begin to change people's minds. We talk about PTSD after wars, but I think the people of Kashmir, unfortunately, have gone through so much brutality. All of us Kashmiris, our personalities have gotten a little scarred. So I do want you to realize that whenever this kind of thing happens, it leaves scars, emotional scars. And these scars do not remain only for the generation that was affected. These scars are generational scars. And therefore, they are akin to generational trauma. They remain with us because the memory, the brutal memory of what is experienced, is something that cannot be easily wished away. So I think we have to appreciate that from all the values, the freedom, uh, the easygoing life to a period when the brutality was so intense, it was fearful. Even the icons that we revered were demolished, changed, taken away. Families were separated. Women became slaves. Kids became slaves. It is the kind of brutality one would not wish on anyone. And a continuous attempt to restrict freedoms, restrict the liberal thinking, and induce coercive persuasion and forced indoctrination. This is terrible. So this is something that unfortunately has affected the people of Kashmir, and this is therefore something that we have to address. When people say, what do we need to do? I think first and foremost, we have to make sure that this is taken care of. Now, how do we take care of these deep scars, the generational scars, this trauma that has been there for so long? I think first and foremost, we have to appreciate that all of us, Kashmir is not only about the people of Kashmir or the region called Kashmir. Kashmir is about not just the whole of India, also. I say the lessons that we learned or that we have experienced in Kashmir have a lesson for the entire globe. We cannot allow coercive persuasion or forced indoctrination or violent intimidation to affect anyone anywhere in the world anymore. Certainly not in India, certainly not in any other part of the world. So, what is the way that we have to move forward? So, that brings me to the fourth and the final part of my talk, which is how do we make sure that we heal the generational trauma? Now, a clue exists in the very seven ideals that the people of Kashmir had embraced. And the seven ideals I spoke about earlier are things that have been inspired and supported by the grace of Devi Sharada. So when I talk about invigorating Devi Sharada, I'm saying let's bring back these seven ideals. Let's embrace them. Let's make them the ideals for the whole world, not just for Bharat Varsha or Kashmir, but for the whole world. And alongside, we also need to introduce a little healing touch. How does it happen? First and foremost, let us all be compassionate about what Kashmir has experienced. Any Kashmiri you man, woman, child that you meet today, just remember that this person has experienced a kind of trauma that no human must ever experience ever again. And therefore, let our hearts reach out in love and kindness and compassion. And I'm not saying this person is only for people of this religion, that, no, not at all. Don't forget that forced or coercive persuasion may have changed the color of what I believe in, but it is a kind of, it is traumatic nonetheless. Everybody is a victim. Everybody is a victim. And therefore, there's a need for all of us in Bharat Varsha to embrace everyone from this land and say, we are sorry that you had to go through this terrible, terrible thing. And now you are healed, or you are in the process of healing. So that's the first thing. And I really think that's a very, very important thing. No blaming, being gentle, being loving, being kind. That is a first step which all of us have to do. And I'm not saying it's about this faith or that faith. No, I'm talking about people. I have not used the word faith at all, because I'm talking about Sanatana Dharma. There's only one existence, one truth, one existence. I'm operating from that space. So the second thing is, we all have to own and embrace the seven values that are inspired by Devi Sharada as part of something that has enabled Kashmir to be a huge contributor to the Sanatana Dharma. That means we have to own all this. It is not only about Kashmir, it's about all of us. We will be inspired. We need to be inspired and see how these values can be rekindled, how we can again allow the grace of Devi Sharda to inspire our minds and our speech, and take us forward. Temples that may have been destroyed can be refurbished. Idols that may have been damaged, we can get them reconstructed. Why does it have to be done? Because whenever something is broken, even from the science of Vastu, they say broken things obviously do not attract grace. So let us improve these things. It might take time, doesn't matter, but let us make a beginning. Let's create spaces where everybody can be healed. I must digress for a minute here. The Indian Army is present on the borders of Bharatvarsha in Kashmir. They have been doing yeoman service in helping local populations to get medical care, to get assistance, to have the young children play sports, and that is something that we can all do through the strengthening of the temple infrastructure. A temple can also be a place where everybody gets together, reads books, gets inspired, learns a new skill. Something can be done. So I think, we just have to be a bit creative and see what more can be done. Number three, all of us in Bharat Varsha have to strengthen the ability to think critically. I think one of the greatest things about Kashmir has been, and about Sanatana Dharma has been, that we all, based on our own experiences, based on the eras that we are in, we can contribute to enriching Sanatana Dharma with our ideas, with our thinking, with innovations, with new approaches. And this is what makes the Sanatana Dharma an eternal Dharma. And therefore, every one of us has to strengthen this ability to be a critical thinker, coupled with the fact that we have to have the ability to articulate what we are saying, to debate what we are thinking, to stand by what ideals we have, and be prepared to be convinced if our ideals and ideas are not sufficiently strong. I think that ability is something that we have to cultivate as part of the process of healing. Critical thinking will enable healing to happen as well, because we can then reflect on what may have happened to us. How has coercive persuasion changed us? How has forceful indoctrination changed us? Are we obedient because of fear? Or are we obedient because we believe in something? Are we convinced? Critical thinking enables these thought processes to happen. And we have to stand up for justice everywhere. We have to stand up for inclusion. In Kashmir, everybody was open to the path of moksha. Everybody. That has to be true today. That has to be true for all eternity. Every human being has to be on the pathway to moksha. And that means inclusion. We have to have enforce, we must celebrate diversity, we must enhance trust, and we have to unify rather than separate out, because that is the highest ethical form for people of the Sanatan Dharma. Because if there is only one existence, bringing that together as one whole, integrating, is ethical. Number five, we have to learn to be self regulated. We have to attain self mastery and not be like Bhim of the Mahabharata, who was a little flippant. He was a strong young boy, and he would keep on, his cousins, the Kauravas, he would pull them underwater and make them gasp for breath. He would, taunt them. He would throw them from trees. And many people believe that it was this kind of foolish, impulsive actions by Bhima, the strong one of the Pandavas, that actually precipitated the Mahabharat war. I know this might sound a little far fetched, but who knows? As kids playing together, these things could have left scars in the Kauravas. And that could have been the reason for them to behave so unjustly with the Pandavas. It's a thing we can think about. And of course, finally, another aspect, and this takes me to a more contemporary aspect of the healing process. We have to enable Sanatan Dharma, has to make sure that in public service, people who are in public service, politicians and so on, they have got to emphasize the values that strengthen ethics, inclusion, trust, and enable a strengthening of the seven basic values and guiding principles that I mentioned have been the hallmark of Kashmir through the ages. So, if we were to pursue these six ideas: compassion, love, kindness for the people of Kashmir; number two, owning the spiritual contributions, strengthening the infrastructure, the temples, uh, you know, the thousands of books that have been burned, the manuscripts that have been lost, getting them back into the mainstream. Because don't forget, part of the forceful intimidation and forceful indoctrination is limiting what knowledge you have available. That's why burning libraries in Nalanda and Takshashila made so much sense. You want to get obedience by only one idea, that's all. That has never been the case in Sanatana Dharma. We want a multitude of ideas, because even though existence is one, the pathways to understand and experience that are thousands, infinite. And that is why it is important to strengthen this infrastructure and bring back those values that are essential. Number three, we talked about learning how to be critical thinkers. Number four, standing up for justice, inclusion, diversity, and consciously uniting rather than making separate. Number five, self-regulation, self-mastery, not being impulsive like Bhim or even Arjun, who sometimes would make a he'd he'd say that I'll do this by sundown, and then he couldn't do it, and of course Lord Krishna would have to help him. So things like this have to be kept in mind. And finally, we have to ensure that in this day and age, our political orientation strengthens the values and the principles of Sanatana Dharma, so that we can continue to flourish as a civilization, as a land where people have always found security, where people have always welcomed diverse people. In fact, I have a lot of Jewish friends, and they know that when they were persecuted in Palestine and other parts of the world, they would come to India. And to this day, in Cochin, there is a synagogue which is 2,500 years old. And not just those, when the Parsis came from Iran, again they ran away from persecution. They were welcomed in India. And they came to Gujarat with their leader, And the king of Gujarat at that time said that I can't accommodate you because you know uh, there is no land available here. But the leader of the Zoroastrians got a bowl of milk full to the brim, and he poured sugar in it, and he said the milk did not spill, but the milk was sweetened. He says we will be like that, and they were given place. So India has since time immemorial been a land where these principles of Sanatan Dharma and the seven ideals that have governed life in Kashmir through millennia have helped to make us what we are today. And I think if we have to heal the generational trauma experienced not just in Kashmir but in other parts of the country as well, we have to strengthen the values inspired by Devi Sharada and work towards healing this generational trauma through the 6 point action plan that I spoke about. Jai Gurudev. Thank you.
I was just saying it was a great summary, and I could see people are really absorbed in your presentation. I don't see any questions other than appreciation of your talk.
Thank you.
There is
Thank you
nothing
so
to
much.
question. But I have few things as always I ask. I wonder if those 7 points, which are sounding like 7 habits of most successful people, is it applicable to Kashmir or for entire India? Because in rest of India too, slowly these are all lacking one by one. I don't want to name all that. That is precisely the point. This is going in that direction, some parts of India. So,
So,
what you said, you summed up later on, like, how do you arrive at that? You mentioned about joy, ethics, coexistence, compassion. You mentioned about inclusion, kindness, trust. All those are missing. Slowly, the degradation may be happening to other parts too. How do you bring all this together? This is so
you know,
impressive.
I'll be very honest, Shankar. The fact is that one of the greatest strengths of Sanatan Dharma is that it is eternal because it changes with the times. Within the broad architecture of Sanatan Dharma, we are able to contribute to its enrichment in keeping with the times. So I have therefore the 7 points that I started off with. In my opinion, these are the points that are needed in this day and age by not just Bharat Varsha or Kashmir, but by the whole world. And I think we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we do not spread these ideas around the world. Just like in the early parts of of the common era, wise people from India would travel around the world spreading good ideas. We need to do that again. And we have the added advantage of social media, of YouTube, of television channels. We can do it and we need to do it. Rather than being should we say, being confined to what we may have done so far, we have to add on to our Satan Dharma and make it capable of resolving the current day's issues, and that is what keeps the Sanatan Dharma eternal dharma. So I'm completely with you. Whatever I have said is applicable to this day and age. And the good thing about India is that we have never differentiated between secular and spiritual knowledge. We are as adept with maths and science and philosophy as we are with pursuing moksha.
I see one comment here. It is not just the trauma of the past invasions, but also the political cross-border terrorism that continues to keep Kashmir traumatized. Shakti
Absolutely.
leadership.
Yeah. So,
I think it's
so
very
uh,
point.
this is a very, very valid point by the Shakti leadership team. I happen to know them, so it's a uh, very, very pertinent point. You see, the tragedy of this of our current age is that there are still nations that demand 100% obedience of their citizens, and as if that's not enough, they're also interfering with other nations and using violent methods to bring about coercive persuasion or violent intimidation. So the tragedy is that leaders have got to understand that this is not a good way to manage or people's lives. So this is a very, very valid point, and the past 30 years in Kashmir have also been traumatic, exactly because guns and violence were used to intimidate the people of Kashmir, to force uh, Hindus out of Kashmir, to force the people who stayed behind to be completely obedient, not to say a word. Anybody who said something was liquidated. It is terribly traumatic. I mean, but we as a nation have got to resist this. This is not okay. And that is our dharma in this day and age. We have to do something about it. And if our leaders in politics are not doing enough about it, we have to take it upon ourselves to inspire them, to get them to do something about it, because that is our dharma. How can we not do that? So a lot of people tell me, oh, Bharat, but no, we are not a spiritual organization. We are only a spiritual organization. We're not political. I'm sorry, but if the whole idea of spirituality is moksha and finding the truth, and something is coming in the way of that, wouldn't you remove that from the pathway? Wouldn't you remove that roadblock? If there's a tree that's fallen on the road and you have to drive to some important destination, you remove the tree, of course. The same has to be done with the many challenges that are preventing our nation as a civilization to flourish, and all people in our nation to be completely free and completely capable of pursuing their own dharma and their own moksha.
There is another point here. Very wonderful talk. Please, can you share about how the people who undergo the therapy or post-therapy can be engaged in the society, like how they can approach for employment, education, or otherwise? You touched upon Iran briefly. I think you mentioned somewhere. There is a mass movement we see, but here, I don't know how that's going to be applicable because some people are really brainwashed on the 7 points are being taught differently with a different thinking. So to bring them back here, no political organization can print all this and say this is our agenda because they've been brainwashed and this cannot be sold as easily. So this point, how they can approach for, like she mentioned in this, share
Yeah.
about how the people who undergo the therapy can be engaged.
So first and foremost, Bhuvana, we have to appreciate that therapy is slow and it requires immense patience. But the starting point is enabling people to think critically. That means we have to allow people on their own to realize that, oh my God, this is what I've been doing. That is the best form of change. There is no, you cannot force this, you cannot even push it. But once that transformation happens, then it is possible to enable them to take up vocations that are suited to their temperament. They can join and do things. They can serve using their many skills and gifts, because everybody has them. And let's not forget, at the end of the day, all of us, all of humanity, wants freedom, wants peace, wants love, kindness, wants to serve others. That is the essential human condition. And therefore, we have to create space for that to happen. So I honestly don't have a more precise answer than this, but Ms. Kotiswaran's question is a very, very valid one. I think we have to start off with enabling uh, people to be self-aware, and that means make them think critically.
There is another comment here. Live and let live should be the motto. The government and the administration should try to bring peace to the whole nation and world as well. We know what's going on, and
Yeah, but let's not forget that, as I said in the very beginning, at the end of the day, everything that we see happening in the whole universe is Leela, is a play between Shiva and Shakti. Now, that is important to keep in mind because some things you can change, some things you can't change. What you can change is yourself. You become an instrument of compassion, of kindness. You allow your opponent to live. You allow the people you don't like, against whom you might have some rag or dvesh, you allow them the space to be themselves. And if you can debate with them, wonderful. Convince them, or you be convinced. I think that realization is also equally important, that you cannot control everything. After all, the Brahmand is the responsibility of Brahma. So leave it to him, or Vishnu, or or Shiva. I know I didn't mention this, but one of the reasons why in Kashmir there has been a contemplative, a lot of emphasis on contemplation, because by virtue of the fact that Kashmir has been on actual geological fault lines, it has been prone to earthquakes, floods, uh, glacier avalanches, and all kinds of fires and terrible natural calamities. So when you see calamities happening every few decades, you say, "My God, what's going on?" So you just become contemplative and realize that you do what you have to do and leave the rest to Shiva and Shakti and let them do their Leela. So it also keeps one's sanity, because otherwise one can go crazy in this world. My God, I can't control anything. And the whole idea of control, to my mind, is an absolute misconception. You do what you can do best and move on with that. Within those seven principles that I mentioned, and I think that would be a very, very powerful way to lead one's life to fulfillment, to joy, to success.
that's a very compassionate explanation. Nothing revolting against, and displaying those seven unique that you all clearly mentioned. It's for the world, not just for Kashmir or just for India, which are applicable for the entire world. But a lot of people are watching this program now. It's gaining some traction. So, are we on the right track now with the changes taking place? Just let's ignore all this happening in Kashmir killings. Are we going on the right track and we see light at the end of the tunnel, or it's not a high-speed train coming?
No, I think things are on the right track. And let me also share with you, Shankarji, that the very fact that the Kanchi Kamakoti Peetam has been behind these 68 episodes on Kashmir, these have created a vibration that is spreading all over Bharat and across the globe. And it is sensitizing people to the fact that Kashmir is not only an issue about the people of, or with the people of Kashmir, or the people of Kashmir who've been pushed out. This is a thing that requires healing for the sake of Bharat Varsha itself. And Kashmir, through the ages, has contributed to the world. It can again become a beacon light for the rest of the world. And enhance to the glory of Bharat Varsha and the Sanatana Dharma as well. So I'm very, very convinced that that's what's happening. And in fact, I'm also pleased to share with the audience that my elder brother Arun and I have created a foundation called the Foundation for Peace and Compassionate Leadership. Now, this foundation is working precisely on the six things for healing that I spoke about. And it starts off with creating a space for young people, for elderly people, for people of all walks of life to be able to understand that they are in pain, and that self realization itself triggers healing, reconciliation, and becoming free once again, free of any kind of brainwashing or dogma or anything that may have been holding us back. And the website of our foundation can be accessed by simply typing out the URL fpacl.com. And
Sure,
I'll be
we'll have a look at it.
delighted to have anyone who is interested to collaborate with us and take this forward.
No, one last point. You mentioned about leaving to God, to Shiva, Vishnu, and also mentioned about the work done by Kanchi Kamakoti Peetam. For over a decade, Kanchi Mutt is directly involved in Shankara Jayanti functions at Shankara Hills.
Correct.
A
Correct.
group of people are going. Actually, we covered that in our program too. Those who are listening and who would like to join may keep in touch with us. Every year, this is organized. About
Wonderful.
150 to
Wonderful.
200 people join.
Yeah.
And quietly, that is being done with the grace of
Very nice.
Kanchi Mutt.
And I'm grateful for that. And I must tell you also, uh, the at the foot of Shankaracharya Hill, where we have the temple of Lord Shiva, where Adi Shankara meditated in a small cave. I was born at the base of that hill. And
Oh,
therefore, the very fact that I'm here with you today is kind of, in a way, my way of expressing gratitude to all that is being done by the Kanchi Mutt and His Holiness Shankaracharya Jainendra Saraswati ji, by all of you. And I'm very, very appreciative of all that has been done.
oh, that is really fascinating. So, thank you so much for time today and very inspiring that seven unique elements. Even though you clarified it's not unique, they are unique because it's forgotten in other parts. And you also offered many solutions. What can be gained? I'm sure people who are listening, they will incorporate this into whatever they are going to preach soon in that area. And we would like you to come back again in 2023 with some new thoughts
Thank you
and
very much.
advice.
I would be very, very honored, and thank you so much again. I'm truly very, very grateful. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, sir.
Namaskar.
Well, viewers, thank you for your time today. We have more programs as always in next year too, and would like to thank Kanjima channels. You can go and listen to all our 68 lecture in all the YouTube videos available. We would like to thank Dinamalar. Dinamalar actually carried out good coverage about today's program in today's Dinamalar, being Saturday. They'll make it a point to cover after seeing our flyer. So, VDSP for streaming support as always. So, till we meet again next Saturday, 7 p.m. Jai Jai Shankara, Hara Hara Shankara.